pipeline of women in science, widening the pipeline of women leading science, who have been, sending down the elevator for more women to go up the ladder, for more women to climb up and get into leadership, who have been, designing programs to support more women to get into the science programs, but also some who have gone through some of these programs and have had an opportunity to get mentored or to get trained. And so we want to hear from different people today about, their experiences. What are some of the strategies that have worked? What we are seeing is that there's been, a renewed momentum, if I can say, or a growing attention to the issue of the gender gap in science, but we are seeing that the gender gap is still very stubborn. It persists. And what we are hearing is that some of the barriers or some of the issues that, the reason why the gap persists are actually systemic barriers that hold the women back. And sometimes we are also seeing that the leaky pipeline manifests in different ways, in different contexts. And so we want to hear about, some of the different ways that the leaky pipeline may manifest, or some of the systemic barriers that are holding these women back. But we don't want to get fixated on the problems. We also want to hear about the solutions. What are some of the strategies that have worked? What are some of the strategies that can be scaled, that can be replicated in different contexts? And what are some of the lessons that we can, we can apply in different ways so that we are able to make, some headway, so that we are able to really thread the needle around these issues. Where are women dropping off? So what can we do to address that issue at that point? And so that's the overview of the conversation we are having this afternoon. Do feel free to post your comments in the chat. We shall give you an opportunity to ask questions. We shall also engage you in different ways. We also want to hear from you, our audience, your different experiences. So we'll be asking you questions through Menti. Kindly respond to our questions when we post it in the chat. And I know we are going to have a very exciting conversation. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Susan Carrier, the Director of Award African Women in Agricultural Research and Development, to give us the opening and welcome remarks and to open this webinar. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doreen. And I'm so excited to see the large number of people who have joined us here today. So thank you so much for joining us for this important dialogue. At Award, the African Women in Agriculture Research and Development, our aim is to build a pipeline, or to expand, to create a pipeline of capable, confident, and influential African women in leadership in the agriculture sciences. And we're doing this by investing in women's leadership to foster equality in agriculture research for development sector, but we are also equipping agriculture professionals to integrate gender in their work. We are strengthening institutions to adopt gender-responsive policies and practices, but we are also influencing the enabling environment towards gender responsiveness. So you can ask, why is this dialogue important? And the dialogue is important, I think, for many of the reasons that Dorina has already highlighted, that despite significant progress, and we have seen progress and attention towards increasing the number of women in leadership in the sciences, we still see substantial gender disparities persisting. Women are grossly underrepresented in the leadership in agriculture sciences, but also in other science-related fields. So, for example, we have a report that's coming, an upcoming report on the status of women in agri-food systems in sub-Saharan Africa. And the report shows that even when women finally make it to university to study science, most women will drop off at post-bachelor's level. So we see statistics such as 53% at BSc level, that drops to 43% at master's level, and then drops even further to about 28% at PhD level. This means that there is no pipeline of women who are able to take up these positions. We also find that women face challenges in accessing professional opportunities in the science fields. Often this is informed by discriminatory practices and structural barriers within the institutions that they are working in. These barriers hinder women from advancing in science careers, but also limiting their leadership potential. And we recognize that if you're going to make a success in these careers, we know that individual and institutional drivers become particularly important, either in the education institutions, but also in the workplace, where personality traits such as self-motivation and the courage to step out of one's comfort zones becomes key determinants of success. So what are we hoping to achieve? At Award, one of our focus areas, as I've mentioned, is widening the pipeline of women in leadership in the agriculture sciences. And our current strategic plan very clearly outlines why this is important and also includes a focus on working particularly with younger women professionals. Now, since our founding, which was in 2008, Award has worked to improve African women's experiences in agriculture research for development. And through our fellowships, we've continued to strengthen women scientists' capacities to lead, capacities to do good research, to publish their work, to write winning proposals, but also to expand the professional networks that they need in order to thrive. This policy dialogue is organized in the context of one of our programs, our leadership program for emerging African women in science. And through this program, we want to shine a spotlight on younger women under the ages of 35 years. And we want to equip them with the tools and skills they need to navigate some of the challenges that women in science face. We are investing in establishing platforms through which intergenerational mentoring and network can happen, but we also want to inspire the young women to stay the course on science careers. So get into science, but also stay. The program is supported by the Carnegie Corporation of New York, and we are very grateful for the support. And with this support, we are committed to growing an intergenerational network of leaders, of champions, and of change makers. So this program has been going on since 2021, and we are really proud to mention that to date, we have supported 114 young African women scientists from 20 countries. This program is going to allow us to grow this number almost to double that. We are encouraged by the enthusiasm we've seen with the young African women scientists, and we are also encouraged we hope, and we're also encouraged by your enthusiasm, but also the hope that you carry for our continent and the work that we do. With this program, we will continue to equip young African women scientists with knowledge and skills to develop leadership capacity, to leverage the networks which are important to advance careers, to also enhance their personal brands and navigate the challenges in leadership space. We hope to develop a pool of young women who are confident and who are capable and who are able to navigate some of the challenges that they will encounter, that you will encounter in your quest to grow in science careers. This dialogue for us is not only necessary, but it is also timely, because as we continue to be confronted with persisting gender gaps, it is critical that we sustain the momentum by spotlighting solutions, as Doreen said, but also to spotlight areas that require intensified work. I'm pleased that today we have lined up some amazing leading experts who share our mission. And we're looking forward to a very insightful conversations on how we can jointly ramp up efforts towards closing the gender gaps in science. Once again, thank you so much for joining us on this webinar, and we look forward to your active participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Susan. Join me in appreciating Susan. Thank you very much for the remarks, and thank you for reminding us that our mission is not just to get the women into the science careers, but it's also getting them to stay there and to get into leadership eventually. So thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to request my colleagues to share the Menti link. We are talking about women's leadership, and we want to hear from you. What does leadership mean to you? There's leading differently, or there's different, ways of these different forms of leadership. What does leadership mean to you? And what leadership qualities do you think are the most essential ones to continue cultivating among emerging women? There's a chat that has been posted, a link that has been posted in the chat. Do feel free to please go in there. It will be open for the rest of this session. We'll come back to it at some point, but please tell us, what do you think? What does leadership mean to you? What does leadership mean to you? So now I'd like to invite Dr. Fiona Moyes, Chief Executive Officer of Mawazo Institute, Kenya. She's our keynote speaker, and she's going to be sharing with us some framing remarks for this conversation that we are having today around women in research or women in science. What does it look like? What is the status? What are some of the key trends that we are seeing? What are some of the key issues that are emerging when it comes to, the latest data regarding women in research and African women in research, so to speak? So I'd like to invite Fiona to take the floor. Will you be sharing us? Yes, great, excellent. Welcome, Fiona.
Thank you so much, Doreen. And thank you so much, Susan, for giving us an insight. And just congratulations for the Growth of Award and the amazing work Award is doing. It definitely served as a big inspiration for what Mawazo does and how we do what we do. So thank you for all that you do. Today, in terms of just framing and kind of like setting the scene, really, in terms of what are we finding when we ask African women researchers about their lives and what it's like to be an African woman researcher on this continent. We did a study based on there we go. So and you can get the report here, the full report, if you would like to read through it. But we did surveys with about 100 and just under 1,500 women responded to this survey towards the end of 2023, early 2024. This was part of the application process for our fellowship program. It was a way that we could get a sense of who these women were who were applying for our fellowship program, which supports African women PhD students on the continent, and get a sense of what their lives were like. So this is kind of the basis of where the information is coming from. The information and the data that was used is also backed up by the completed applications that we received, which was just under 1,000 applications. So this is where the source of the information came from. And the reason why we really wanted to do this report, beyond it, really telling us what we need to be doing and informing the work that we do at Mawazo, I think we wanted to just genuinely understand who these women were, what fields they were in, the challenges that they were facing throughout their research careers, and really trying to understand whether is this a blanket term, are African women across the continent dealing with the same issues, or is there things that are confined to certain regions of the continent? And so we wanted to get the sort of these kind of insights a little bit more to help, get these really regional perspectives of what is happening with African women researchers on the continent. We decided to use really kind of a mixed methods way of doing the data collection. So we had, of course, the surveys, and we followed these surveys up with some in-depth interviews with some of our fellows that we currently have and alumni of our programs to really get the voice behind the data. We felt that this was really important, given that this report was representing African women researchers from across the continent. We're not just numbers. We have stories, we have lived experiences, and we really wanted to capture that in this report. So just to give you an idea of who the respondents were, we got majority of respondents from Eastern Africa, because this is where we originally started at Mawazo. So we were expecting this kind of higher figure coming in from East Africa, but we were really excited to see a lot more respondents coming from Western Africa, Southern Africa, some from Central Africa, and a very small percentage from Northern Africa as well. The percentage that you see there behind the region is the percentage, sort of the top 6 countries that responded to the surveys. The sort of the ages of the women who responded, majority were between the ages of 35 and 39, but it spanned all the way from 25 up to 55 years old. What we can see here is that a lot more women are going into their PhDs later in their careers as well, and it's something that we can't ignore as well. We also found that 17% of the applicants reported some level of disability, with the biggest being a visual impairment in this case. Again, something that we have to be aware of as we continue to build, solutions and things for African women researchers. But to get into the juicy part, the results and what these women are saying, what the information was saying, we found that in terms of the research themes that were being represented, we had majority of the applicants falling between these three topics. So life and health sciences, agriculture and food security, and climate change, natural resources, and the environment. I don't think this is a big surprise given the audience that's even here today with the award would fall neatly into this. And also, of course, the key priorities for the continent more broadly are around these topics. Going straight into the big one, funding. Funding was a big topic and a big problem for African women researchers. We asked them about what the success rates were of them securing funding for their PhDs, and we found that 66% of applicants were not able to secure funding. We'll get into how they ended up funding their research later on in the presentation. There's also regional, if you go into the report, you'll see that there is also regional imbalances with a lot of the ones that did secure funding coming from Southern Africa, and those who the least amount of funding secured was coming out of Western Africa. In terms of understanding sort of the impact of that lack of funding, what does that actually mean? We found that 97%, as you would expect, really reported a big negative impact of the lack of funding. This was done over a scale, so there was a number of they could select high up to low impact. And so the figure that you see there, the 71%, was sort of the average impact level of the lack of funding on African women researchers. And then we go to where they're funding. How are they funding their research? And this one was really surprising. I don't think we expected the number to be quite this high, but 61% of African women researchers, according to our data, are funding their research through personal savings. This is a really big one, and it really stands out to me because it just goes to show that African women are literally paying for the research that's going to, secure our future on the continent, which is a really wild thing to consider. We also had here a case in point example of one of our respondents who said that she was working, at two different universities as a part-time lecturer, amongst other things, trying to save money so that she could fund her cost of living, so that she could finish her PhD. She really just wanted to find something that could just keep her going so she could do her PhD. Then we go to sort of research mobility, and by this we mean whether there's been movement beyond their country of origin. We started by asking them about their master's degree, and then we found that majority of 99% of the women who responded had completed their master's on the continent. This goes to show the impact of the institutions that we have and the master's degrees that we are delivering in really influencing African women researchers' trajectories. When we go to at the PhD level, we found that 79% were conducting their PhDs in their home countries, so they were not leaving their home countries, whereas 21% were moving to another African country. And South Africa, as you may have guessed, had the most diverse PhD applicants in terms of nationalities. We saw about 16 different countries represented in the applicants that were based in South Africa. We also looked into collaboration and the impact of collaboration on African women researchers. And by this, we really meant how does the presence or the lack thereof of collaboration, how does it influence or impact your research? That was really the question we wanted to ask. And we found that a majority, 92%, found that collaboration was really impacting their research. And by this is really most tied to the fact around publications. Either they were not able to get good collaborations and end up being, be co-authors on papers, or ending up in collaboration situations where they should have been primary or first authors, but were relegated to another position because just bargaining power. Either another non-African institution or a member of their team who's more senior wanted to be a first author. So collaboration and poor collaboration, or the negative effects of poor collaboration, were really reported as a big impact on their careers. We then looked at sort of the academic support. This is a question around supervision and the quality of supervision of PhD students. And we found that 52% felt that there was no impact on their careers in terms of having unsupportive supervisors, whereas 48% said they did. But despite a slight majority saying they had no impact, the impact of those who had poor supervision was incredibly high. Here's an example of one of our alumni who had begun her PhD journey back in 2014. Towards the end of her PhD in 2019, she ran into problems with her supervisor, and she ended up having to withdraw from her PhD program and start afresh. Now, for those of you who have PhDs on this call, can you imagine coming to the end of your PhD and going back and starting from scratch? This is another level of determination and grit that it's unbelievable. Bearing in mind, she also was juggling a family at the same time. And we celebrated her when she finished her PhD last year, but this goes to show the potential impact of poor or a negative relationship with the supervisor and its impact. We also asked about professional growth in terms of things like mentorship and career. We go into a lot more detail in the report, but this is kind of a snapshot in terms of the high impact on the careers of African women researchers when they lack access to mentorship and career guidance, access to research and academic skills training, and lack of support with preparing research papers for publications, particularly because a lot of PhDs are tied to publications. We come to now sort of more the gendered experiences of being African women researchers, and we found that 75% of the respondents had roles as primary caregivers on top of being current PhD students at institutions on the continent. When we asked about the impact of family commitment, so this is beyond just primary caregivers, 82% said it had an impact on the amount of time they could spend on their research. We then asked them about the lack of the impact of lack of funding on those women with caregiving responsibilities. And I mean, there's not a big difference between that on the caregivers and the non-caregivers, but we do see a slightly more heavier impact on those who are also carrying caregiving responsibilities. Finally, we come to sort of sexism and misogyny. We found that 30% of African women researchers reported medium to high impact of misogyny on their research careers. There's an example of one of the respondents who's a Muslim woman, and people trying to see her hair behind her veil. And then if she's trying to say no and put boundaries, but it's not respected. She says that as an academic, she has rights, and as a woman, she has her dignity, and you have to respect me. And this is one little snapshot. We do want to continue doing more work delving into this topic. It's a very sensitive topic to find out a little bit more about this, but we didn't delve into the depths of it with this study. And so we found that really the financial constraints, the funding component, is a really big impact, because at the end of the day, a lot of these women are also raising children in single parent households. They're caring for children with disabilities. They're taking on responsibilities of caring for the children of their siblings in some cases, given especially to get to the point of doing a PhD. You're a respected member of your family, and they expect you to also then take on the responsibilities of helping to look after family members. And so it really does have a very long-term impact on their education and economic status. And so sort of these responsibilities cannot be ignored when we talk about what the realities are of African women researchers here on the continent. And so kind of just to close it off and to draw some conclusions in terms of what their lives look like. Financial and structural barriers, as we've mentioned, are a big part. Of course, there are regional disparities as well, that you can find more on in the report. There are still critical training gaps, I feel, based on conversations and from the report, that some universities are doing a lot of work trying to improve things like academic writing skills and so forth. But there's still some critical gaps. And as Susan was talking earlier on around preparing for a life beyond the research in an academic institution, life in, as working as a scientist, what does that look like, and what skills do they need? I think this is part of that conversation. In terms of the gendered responsibilities, and really trying to understand these really traditional roles that we play within our families, within our communities, and the impact that it has on our ability to show up and give into pour into our research, and so policies around childcare, flexible work, parental leave can really change that and open up, and not hide this. I have plenty of stories of women who would not mention they have children at their workplace, because they want to be seen as a researcher, not as a mother. And those two things, we shouldn't have to separate those two things. I think we should be able to be both, and in fact, our research will be richer for it. And then I just kind of want to finish off in terms of really what the golden pieces in our research. The fact that these women are incredibly resilient and incredibly innovative and finding ways to still conduct their research, even though they're not being funded to do so. And so they really show this determination and creativity, to produce impactful research despite all of these challenges that they're facing. And they're often the ones who are driving this meaningful change, wanting to push and really question things, and address really critical issues across the continent. And beyond that, beyond that research, they are truly the mentors. They are the ones who are really going to guide and create, and uplift the next generation of researchers and inspire them. And so there's a lot of wonderful and powerful things we can do by supporting African women researchers. We see what the gaps are, and I believe truly the cost of trying to fill these gaps versus not filling them is much less. And yeah, I'm happy to see where this conversation goes from here. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. What an insightful presentation. Wow, a lot. I think everybody should interact with that report in detail, and we'll be sharing the link in the chat, but also when we send the recording to you, because we'll share the recording, we'll also share the link. I wonder how many of us are seeing any surprises, anything that is surprising, anything that is relatable. For me, I'm seeing, I mean, or anything that is worth highlighting as something good that is happening. It's good to see that a lot of the women are, the African institutions are still delivering master's graduates and also PhD graduates, which is something to applaud, which means we still need to invest in supporting these institutions. We still need to invest in streamlining the systems and the structures on the continent. It was interesting to see issues around collaboration, and for me, effective collaboration. Also very interesting to hear that women are getting into their PhDs late, or when they're much older, and it's why award for specifically has a very sharp focusing on emerging women in science, because that is why the pipeline continues to leak. So if you have women delaying to get into, getting their master's degrees and PhDs, it means that by the time they're getting them, then they're nearing maybe retirement age, they're getting into leadership when they're older. What repercussions does that have? And so it's specifically one of the reasons why we have the award leadership program for emerging women in science, to try and see if we can sustain the interest, and also have ways in which we can have the women getting to, to stay into the science careers when they're much younger, obtain their masters, obtain their PhDs, and get an opportunity to even be leaders. And I know it's also some of the things that people like Esther Kanduma are working on with their schools outreach program. We have Prof. Bolanle here, immediate former director of academic planning at a Nigerian university. She'll also share with us some of the things that measures they put in place to try and arrest some of these things. So lots of interesting results to ponder on there. Thank you so much, Fiona, for sharing that with us. I'm sure our our audience has lots of questions. I'm also seeing the chat function is very active. A lot of you telling us what leadership means to you. I'm going to invite my colleagues to post the link to the Menti again, so that we can also just put that information in the Menti link. It will be an easier way of us curating all that response. I'm really glad to see our trainers in the house. A very warm welcome to the award trainers, and thank you for engaging us. So with that presentation that really has laid, set the scene for us as to why this is really important that we continue having this conversation. I award we love stories. And before we get into a panel conversation, we're going to have a panel conversation with experts from different parts of the continent who are working on different issues around women in leadership and women in science. We just wanted to to spotlight some of the immediate alumni of the Award Leadership Program for Emerging Women in Science, to hear from them about their journeys. These are very young women who are just, establishing their careers in science, and want to hear from them. How has it been? Why did they apply for the program? What was their motivation? What were they hoping to achieve? And did they actually get it, what they were hoping to achieve? Or is there anything different that we can do even as we continue implementing this program? So I'd like to invite Sharon Akinyi. Sharon Akinyi is a biostatistician by training, and she's also a proud award staff and an alum of the Award Leadership Program for Emerging Women in Science. Sharon, welcome, and talk to us about your journey in the leadership program for emerging women in science.
Thank you so much, Doreen, and thank you everyone for joining. I'll start by posing a question to us. So, did you know that mathematics is now an optional subject in senior secondary school in Kenya? I'm waiting for your responses. And yes, it is. For students who will not pursue the STEM courses or the STEM pathway, while other students struggle with mathematics, for me, it was always an easy and enjoyable journey, right from my primary school. So when it came time to choose a university course, I did not even think twice. I knew it had to be something that is math related. And so I went to do biostatistics at JKUAT. After graduating, I joined Award as a program assistant. And for sure, I did not know what awaited me. I did not imagine the opportunities that will deeply shape not only my career, but also my perspective on leadership, the role of self-motivation, the outlook of networking, and also the power of being mentored and mentorship. So when Award announced the call of application for the 2022 Leadership Program for Emerging Women in Science, I thought to myself, why just not apply? At that point, I did not know whether staff were eligible, but in my mind, I was like, let me apply. There is no harm in applying and being told no. So I went ahead and did my application. And that day I walked to Dr. Karia's office and I told her about my goals, my vision, and we also talked about my growth, not only at Award, but beyond Award. And I went through the application process and I was selected and participated in the program. So during the program, the element of purpose roadmap was really a defining moment for me. So we had to come up with, envision our goals, our dreams, and come up with how we were to achieve them. And I remember during that moment, I was just visualizing myself in a gown, posting my pictures. I know my colleagues know I do love pictures. And as I was writing my purpose roadmap, this is what I was envisioning. And I already have a caption that I will use, and the caption is mastered it. So, and remember at award, as you write your purpose roadmap, you also need to indicate what you will do to achieve, and also need to identify accountability partner who will hold you at course. And these two things really grounded me. And I really had a strong support system that kept asking me, where are you in your application for your master's? And I remember one of them used to share, and she still does, share opportunities, scholarship opportunities, and still follow up if I had really went through the website and responded to the call of application. And I knew from that moment that no matter what, I had to begin my master's in 2024. And for now, I'm happy to share that in 2024, I registered for my master's at the University of Nairobi. I received my acceptance letter. I started my classes in September 2024. And right now, I'm pursuing my master's of One Health and Research Ethics. And thank you to the shoulders, to the giants that helped me. I managed to secure a studentship at the University of Nairobi, which is supported by Ohio State University. And with this, it's helping me doing my research work and also helping me to publish 3 case studies by the end of this period. Right now, I'm working on publishing 2 of the case studies. And moving forward, I feel like things are shifting. My purpose roadmap keeps evolving. I keep adding new goals and redefining the old goals and embracing the journey as it is. My name is Sharon Akinyi, and thank you for listening.
Wow. Amazing, amazing, amazing story. Sharon, congratulations on staying the course. Congratulations on going all the way, securing your admission at the University of Nairobi, and being accountable to your accountability partners. And congratulations to the Director Award for supporting you and encouraging you to go for it. And I'm sure for all your, the support system that you've mentioned, they're proud of the progress that you're making. We are so pleased to have you on the team and to have you continuing leading this program for everybody else. I can see so many people saying, nice to see you again. So I think you have some fans in the audience. And thank you also for encouraging Sharon. So Sharon is one of the many fellows that have gone through award programs. I can see a lot of them saying this is relatable. But it's also one of the few who have been participating in this particular program that is targeting women under 35 years of age. And alongside Sharon is also a young woman from Eswatini, Nkobile. I hope I was practicing to pronounce your name, Nkobile. Nkobile is also an alum of the Award Leadership Program for Emerging Women in Science. I don't see Nkobile. Oh, here you are. Okay, I thought you dropped off. Nkobile has been doing it all. You've heard Fiona mention caregiving. You've heard Fiona mention people having to deal with family issues, establishing a family, establishing a career. Should I pick and choose? Nkobile has proudly mastered both. Yeah, and she just recently had her baby. We are really pleased to have her here. She will be telling us about her experience also in this program. And she just recently completed her master's at the University of Pretoria. Yeah, when we heard that South Africa was leading in terms of the diversity of women pursuing their studies there, I was just nodding because that is relatable to me. Nkobile, welcome and talk to us about your journey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nkobile Koza. So I know that's very hard to pronounce. So Koza is just fine. So I think once I was studying in South Africa, I had the same challenge where people would pronounce my name in all sorts of ways, and it's okay. It's really okay. I hear what you're saying. So I recently finished my master's degree in agronomy at the University of Pretoria, which took longer than it was supposed to, which is why I think the award leadership program came at the right time for me, because I applied for the award leadership program when I was already towards the end of my master's degree, not really sure if I still want to continue with PhD. You know, when you've gone through a very challenging master's degree, you're thinking to yourself, should I really continue? Is this what I want in life? So I completed my undergrad in Eswatini, right, in 2016, came back, worked, enjoyed work, changed jobs. Then I decided, no, this is not where it ends. Let me go back to academia, try my hand in it, you know, because, you know, when you have a curious mind, you want to explore how far you can go. So I did my honors degree and my master's degree at the University of Pretoria. And so when it got to the master's degree, that's where I really felt what research was. That's where I really felt maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was. So I did that master's degree, and when I was enrolling for the award leadership program, it got to help me redefine what it means to be a leader, first of all. Because, you know, I've always had the assumption that you have to lead from the front. You've got to be up there in the podium, making the rules and helping everyone get to what they need to do. But when I was in the program, it helped me to redefine that and helped me to lead in the position where I already was. Because I was holding junior positions on campus. And sometimes you're not really sure where you fit in as a woman. You're not really sure where you fit in as a scientist, because some of these roles are not really science-based. So that's why I got to actually put in the skills and knowledge about leadership, time management, and actually focusing on what needs to be done as a science leader. So that was the first thing that I think I really applied at that time. And then the career roadmap. I have had 100 copies printed of that. Why? Because it keeps on changing. It keeps on changing. Initially, even before, because in the program, they gave us an assignment. Go write this up. Just tell us what you'd like to achieve in the next 10 years. I wrote that up. Very nice. I want to be a publisher at the end of 10 years. It's very nice. It's a very great dream, hey? But when we really got down to the one-on-one sessions where you actually have to state the objectives, why do you want to do this? How do you think you're going to do this? What will it take for you to actually get to the next stage of the whole map? You sit down at 2 in the morning and really think, am I doing what needs to be done? Whatever I'm doing now, is it helping me get to where I need to where I need to get to? So you end up crashing that paper and starting all over. So as of this year, becoming a mom, I had to get copies again and really draft. How do I balance being a mom and continue with my research? Because I've already started with my PhD applications and I still want to do my PhD. But now the question is how. So it got to me where I really appreciate the women in science and who've actually gone through the whole process and have actually taught me how to balance all of this. Because I was probably gonna be one of the people who get into the statistics of dropping out right after masters to pursue family and come back maybe after 40 to come back and do my PhD. But having conversations with those women, it's starting to make sense. Because life is not only about the diapers and the sleepless nights, but life has to continue as a scientist. So I really appreciate being part of the program because I'm able to actually speak to women who understand what this means and how you can actually navigate the whole life and work balance. I am a farmer on the side. I am a mom. I'm a researcher. I'm a consultant. And each day I try to convince myself I'm still sane, but I'm I'm trying. I'm trying, and it's really great having a support system that helps you to refocus and actually continue the path that you've already started. So thank you so much, Award, and thank you everyone who's been helping me just navigate this whole thing. Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations, Govile, on graduating. Congratulations and coming back to finish what you started. We are super proud to hear that. And yes, indeed, a support system is key. We can never overemphasize the value and the importance of having a support system around you, even as you pursue all these things. And you don't have to give up one for the other. Now, as we've heard those inspiring stories, we also know that there are some things that must happen behind the scenes. The people who are leading these programs, people who are designing these programs, we've heard about funding, we've heard about, the university, going back and will the university still accept you? So what does it take, or what do we have to do differently, or what is working, what doesn't work? And I want to introduce my panel. We have three esteemed panelists. We have Dr. Dorothy Ngila, Director of Knowledge and Institutional Networks at the National Research Foundation, South Africa. We have Dr. Esther Kanduma, Senior Lecturer at the University of Nairobi. And we have Professor Bolanle Aishat Akinwade, who is the immediate former Director of Academic Planning at the Ladoke Akintola University of Technology, LAUTECH, in Nigeria. We are going to be having a conversation with these three esteemed panelists around what it takes. How can we, move the needle? What do we need to stop doing? What should we do differently? What is working? And I want to start with Dr. Ngila. We've had several studies actually show a very strong linkage between women in leadership and broader gender inclusion. And we have heard even from Fiona's presentation around structural barriers. So how can institutions better use data, to design targeted interventions? Welcome, Dorothy.
Thank you very much, Doreen. Good afternoon, colleagues from wherever we all are joining. It's really wonderful to be here with you today. I think for me, there are three key things that I want to share in terms of the question that you've asked. The first one is that we really have to recognize that all sets of scientific institutions that we have in the world, whether it's funders, whether it's the universities, whether it's publishers, all of them that we have today have never been built to support and advance gender inclusion. The foundational understanding of that really brings us to this question of how important it is for us to pay attention to fixing those institutions of science for gender inclusion. So that's foundational. The second aspect is how important data is, qualitative, quantitative data. It's powerful, but in and of itself does not necessarily drive change. There are aspects that are around correct utilization of power and influence when you're in leadership to really channel data results into changes in policies. And I want to give an example, a famous example that we have here in South Africa over a couple of I would say 10 or so years ago. We were already starting to support strategic investments as the National Research Foundation that were supporting research chairs and centers of excellence. And we had been through a cohort of research chairs, all of them awarded to men. And in recognizing the dearth of female-led research chairs, with an incredible champion who at the time was the Minister of Science and Technology, one decision was made between the leaders of the organization and the ministry that we were going to launch a woman-only call for research chairs that led to awarding 42 research chairs many different questions after the awarding of the 42 chairs then were asked. How come institutions in South Africa were not putting forward women as research chairs? Why did it have to take a specific call? Number two, even though we awarded 42 research chairs, around 40 of them were white women. So the question of the intersecting identities and the impact of that from a leadership perspective really come to play in that sense. And so, I end by saying that it's so important for institutions to collect, to analyze, to report gender disaggregated data. It's a critical first step, but to recognize that we have to utilize our power and influence in leadership so that that data really does drive changes in policies and in interventions. And in some instances, making sure that we have got targeted interventions that really support gender inclusion towards fixing institutions which were foundationally they foundationally are not supporting gender inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorothy, for sharing and for emphasizing that it's not just about the data, it's more than just about the data. We need to move beyond that to fostering utilization and uptake of that data. And we really should not get tired about talking about, what the data shows, because we need to influence decisions based on the data that we are seeing. Thank you very much for those insightful remarks. And I want to transition to Prof. Akinwade, and to specifically just focus on universities. You, having worked at the university, you're also a proud award fellow. How can universities, research institutions, or even funding bodies, because we've heard about funding, move from rhetoric to actually, action in terms of closing the gap? You are the immediate former director of academic planning. Talk to us about that.
Well, thank you once again, Doreen, for the privilege to be here. Well, yes, I've been at the university for some time, and I'll be talking about how they can move from rhetoric to action. So they have crucial, very important role to play in influencing the agricultural science ecosystem. And in the bid to do this, for sure, they must implement a series of intentional systemic changes. And these changes requires not just commitment to gender equality, but also fundamental rethinking of how institutions should operate and how resources should be allocated. So I'll first talk about universities and research institutes. And for this, I'll be talking about three considerations. The first one is the need to revise recruitment and promotion processes. They need to implement blind review processes for applications to reduce unconscious bias, which are related to gender, race, and other factors. It's important that they ensure that hiring and promotion committees are diverse in terms of gender, ethnicity, as well as seniority, to introduce a wider range of perspectives to reduce potential for homogeneous decision-making. They must clearly define and publicize the criteria for promotion and tenure to eliminate any sort of ambiguity, and also ensure that all candidates are evaluated based on the same objective standards. Also, the second consideration is that they need to create an inclusive and supportive culture by using gender-inclusive research language, gender-inclusive language in all communication and course materials. And this will actively incorporate the work of female agricultural scientists into the curriculum to be able to provide visible role models. They need to establish formal mentorship as well as sponsorship programs that specifically target women at different career stages. They must offer flexible schedules and paid parental leave to better accommodate the caregiving. Nkobile said it about caregiving. She's now doing one, and it is important that there is remuneration and also to offer work schedules. Also, they need to develop and offer leadership training programs that address the unique challenges that women face. We have had some experiences shared, and these Another one that is very important is to have training on how to navigate the currently existing male-dominated environments and how to develop an authentic leadership style. And the third one for these two organizations is to conduct, Dorothy Njila said this very well, to conduct and use gender disaggregated data on student enrollment, faculty and staff appointments, promotions, grant applications and awards, as well as leadership positions. And they should analyze this data regularly to identify where the leaks in the pipeline are actually occurring. And this evidence-based approach is very important to know what is working and what needs to be adjusted. So for funding bodies as well, I have three major considerations to share. The first important one is that they need to address bias in grant allocation. This will be by exploring gender-blind review process, where names and affiliations of applicants are removed to prevent bias, because at times they think men can do it better, women will not have time to complete the project. So this is important they explore. They need to also request that universities and research institutes submit a gender equality plan as a prerequisite for receiving funding, and also provide a mandatory training program for grant reviewers on unconscious bias that often happen, and also the importance of evaluating researchers' career trajectory with an understanding of potential career breaks which happen, for example, parental leave at times. So there could be a break in what they do and their achievements. The second one for the funding body is to rethink the evaluation criteria. What do I mean? There needs to be an holistic assessment of excellence by moving beyond metrics like publication count and inch index. And these two definitely can affect the career breaks. Instead of that, they should adopt a more holistic view of excellence that values a range of contributions, and these include teaching, mentorship, community engagement, as well as policy work, and also earmark funding for research that addresses gender disparity in agriculture. And thirdly, they should promote and support women-led research by offering specific grants or fellowships for women researchers, and this will enable them to re-enter the workforce, possibly after a career break, or to support them in their transition to leadership. And also offer flexible grant periods. We know there is always a very rigid one. And this one, if it is flexible, will allow grant extensions or breaks to accommodate significant life events such as childbirth or family care. We have the experience of Ikebile Koza recently, as we just shared. So with all these concrete steps, universities, research institutes, and funding bodies can break the systemic barrier that hold women back. And this shift from mere awareness, because there is difference from awareness to deliberate, measurable action. And this will be the one that will create a more inclusive and equitable agricultural science sector.
Thank you, Prof. Is it my connection or it's Prof? Yes, you are frozen for a few seconds there.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. But thank you very much for your intervention. I think the network is fluctuating. I hope it's not mine because you're frozen on my screen. Okay. Okay.
Oh,
all right.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Prof, for your intervention. Your network was fluctuating towards the end, but you've shared very, very useful insights there. A lot of them that were relatable and were speaking to the results that Fiona presented when she talked about the report that, the research that they did and the report that they just released, flexible funding, but some of them very specific around institutions and what institutions can do better, issues around revising the recruitment and retention policies or promotion. You've talked about training, not just for the women, but also for funding institutions and the grant reviewers. What are some of the things that they need to be thinking about? And we are really pleased to hear that some of the things that we that Dorothy talked about around data and use of data and use of evidence to inform our action going forward. And I want to transition to Esther, Dr. Esther Kanduma, who has been running mentoring programs of different forms, really. What elements have made your programs effective? Now, as we now start to focus on solutions, what elements have made your programs effective? But are there any gaps that are existing that you still think we need to pay attention to?
Thank you, Doreen, and good afternoon to the participants. I ran a program that is trying to bring an intervention right early in the pipeline. And the African Schools Outreach Program is one unique science outreach that is targeting students right early in their primary up to their secondary school. But towards the end, I will also talk about students I interact with on campus and the challenges they face as women in science or women in STEM. And for us, what has really worked very well is that we've been able to demystify science, we've been able to simplify science. We want really to change the way science is understood and the way science is done. And one of the things that really mesmerizes the schools, the principals, and the students that we visit is that we are able to package a lab in a suitcase. It is as simple as that. And this really is a big thing because many public schools in Kenya, but I believe across Africa, have no infrastructure whatsoever to teach STEM. And the fact that you can make a kit, a simple kit, and pack it with scientific tools and be able to deliver very good interactive, modern day science, that in itself has been a success. And then I want to talk about the model that we've been using, one where our program is mainly facilitated by women in science and women in STEM, and they act as role models. And this aspect also has been very impactful because we realized that when we go to schools, one of the activities that we do is to ask the students to draw a scientist. And many of them, including girls, will draw men, and particularly old men. And they say that they have never seen or heard about, a woman scientist or women in STEM. And here we are presenting ourselves as role models so that the young ones can see us and identify with us and aspire to become like us. And I find it really a big problem because this is a cultural social issue that in many societies, we tend to tell the young ones that science is for men, or these particular STEM fields are for men. And so in the minds of the young ones, even as they are going to school, they know that there is no opportunity for the young girls to become scientists. And then something else that has worked is that we've been able to diversify the activities we do with the young ones. So we initially started off by delivering an interactive biology experiment that was supposed to really motivate girls to become future vaccinologists. But we soon realized that we needed to present our different, specializations in science. We needed to bring in a lot of role models who are, working in different areas of science. And over time, we are diversifying to many STEM fields. And this gives an opportunity to students really to hear about us, our career journeys, and we share what it has taken to get us to where we are. And then many of them identify with us. And then as part of these activities, we also been able to add agricultural activities, and especially we are happy about agriculture because if you go to rural areas, marginalized areas, people associate agriculture with a dirty science. And because many of them have grown up either farming or being involved in agricultural activities, they have never considered it as a serious, career that they could pursue. And so we are now able to do agricultural activities. They get inspired that, senior scientists and professors can actually be able, to set up simple gardens. They can be able to show them, climate smart agricultural practices in their schools. They can be able to work with them, and this inspires them very well. And another aspect I believe that has also worked well is that we have tried as much as possible to involve many stakeholders, the school management, to bring in the teachers. We have also, as much as possible, tried to bring in many partners who support the activities so that we are able to continue with the program, because we realized that it is one thing to excite the students, to demystify science, to make the girls feel confident and feel that they are also up to, they can actually also, make it in science, that the sciences are not difficult, that the sciences are for girls too. But we realize that it cannot work in isolation. So if we leave out the teachers, a teacher who is not motivated, a teacher who is not enthusiastic, will have no room whatsoever to inspire students, because we are trying to inspire girls, we are trying to inspire the young ones to make them believe that they have the potential, they can become like us, they can succeed like us. But soon we realize that when we leave the teachers out, these teachers have no opportunity whatsoever to be the mentors that we leave the girls that we have excited. You know, the girls that have, you know, now been motivated that they believe they can make it in science. And then the school management has also been an issue at that level in secondary school, because where school management believe in their science teachers or in their STEM teachers, we see quite a very good reception, adoption, and many of the girls really can feel that they have a potential to come to our universities. Where the management is detached, and particularly where the management is not very enthusiastic about sciences, then we always have a challenge. So first and foremost, we go and find that instead of finding a science teacher, they have left, a guidance and counseling teacher. They have left, a CRE teacher for us. And the aspect that we would want the teachers to assist in trying to motivate these girls, to inspire them, to encourage them, to mentor them, really doesn't really get into a guidance and counseling teacher. It is more about somebody who believes that they are holding these precious young girls and instilling in them some confidence, some values, encouraging them and making them believe that they can make it. So these are some of the aspects, at least at the primary level and the secondary school, where we have worked very much with schools, we see that they are bearing fruit. And as we are looking forward to making it even better, some of the gaps that still exist that would want really to see whether we can have partners, we can have stakeholders, and we can have policymakers support. What we feel is that this aspect of mentorship, science outreach, cannot be left to chance. It has to be deliberate. It has to be, in a way, put into a policy. Because for me, after interacting with these school students for now I think close to 7 years, I realized that it is the single most important factor that really makes the students make an informed decision. So we realized that many of them have not had about many specialization in sciences. How do we expect them even to be able to make a choice to pursue science courses at the university, to pursue STEM courses, even, professions and career in the future, if they have not heard about them? So for me, the aspect that I feel is that we have to find a way of, getting mentorship, getting role models. Each one of us, sitting here in this webinar, you must go back to your schools. You must be there to be seen. You must talk about your sciences. You must talk about your career journey, so that they can identify, with that, person, with this story, and be able to follow your footsteps. We realize also that there's need for policymakers to implement some, policies, and especially that's going to strengthen the capacity of schools to teach STEM. This is a big problem. Teachers need skills, pedagogical skills to teach STEM. Our program is very popular because we do a lot of hands-on interactive, with the students, but we realize because of the big numbers, because of lack of infrastructure, the schools are not able to do this. And this is a funding problem. This is a resource problem. And as much as we are here, we can also, as people working in the, in the science, space, also try and see how we could help our teachers and schools be able to put up small kits that they can, even small experiments that are, low resource, that can help the schools be able to excite the girls about science. Another thing I want to talk about is our institutions. For those of us who come from universities, what we have done over the time is to institutionalize our program. And this gives us an opportunity as a university for us to host the activities. So instead of us, when we are limited and when we can't make it to visit schools, we can host schools visits. And this gives an opportunity to the students to interact with more people on campus, to be able to visit more labs, but also we get, to leverage on partners that the university have. And this has also seemed to help our program moving forward. And then one last thing I want to talk about, we are living in the era of, tech revolution. And we are seeing that we can't now isolate agriculture or basic sciences from, for example, artificial intelligence, from machine learning, from, digital technologies. And that calls also for vibrant programs, and especially those that are targeting to improve STEM learning in schools, and also targeting girls, that we can now involve some tech tools that can also simplify. For example, when we teach teachers on the use of virtual technologies for teaching, and the use of asynchronous, web learning, for example, videos. This helps teachers to be able to deal with the large numbers. And so these are, gaps that we can all try and support the government. We know we have challenges with funding and resources, but we can also individually and as part of institutions be able to support schools, and also be able to support our girls to become the future scientists that Africa is looking forward to having in the next century. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Esther. I really wanted to interrupt you, but you are sharing a lot of good lessons about this lab in a suitcase program that you're implementing in the Africa Schools Outreach Program. I think lots of lessons that very many of us can pick here. A lot of people on the call would pick those. And I'm hearing you say that beyond demystifying science to the young girls that you are encouraging, there's also need to intervene within the broader environment that is happening. You're talking about the teachers, you're talking about having more role models, the school management, them need, they need to pay attention to this. Also, a lot of sensitization that needs to happen for them as well. So indeed, there's a lot more work that needs to happen. A lot more people need to roll their sleeves, and I think this is a model that has the potential to to have a larger impact if it can be replicated across different countries, different locations. I want to transition to Prof. Bolandle, and I would like you to share with us. And we seem to be running behind time. If you could share in 2 minutes, what are some of the policies or institutional shifts that you've seen make a real difference in your context regarding being able to foster women's advancement? Specifically, if we could talk about your institution in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, in Nigeria, there are policies and institutional shifts, yes, to make a difference. The first is the Nigeria's Gender Policy Initiative that was developed in 2006 and revised in 2021. And there is also, the essence of this was to move beyond just acknowledging gender inequality to address the systemic barriers that cause it. And also we have gender-specific institutional policies. And with that, we have some institutions, universities that have developed their own gender policies. Notable examples is that of my university, LAUTECH. I was part of the committee that worked on it years ago, and we had a draft policy, but that draft policy awaits final approval for implementation. We also have for University of Ibadan in Nigeria here. And just to talk briefly about what gender policy commits the institution to have. It commits that there should be equal opportunity, which will ensure that all staff and students, regardless of gender, have equal opportunities to advance and develop, to mainstream gender by integrating gender equality into institutional strategic planning, policy development, and operational procedures. Create mechanisms to eliminate gender violence, discrimination, and injustice on campus, and also enable establishment of gender mainstreaming office. So it is also to create women's centers and programs. And with this establishment, there will be opportunity in universities to have crucial development, which will serve as hub for research, advocacy, and networking. And this will, the unit definitely will provide platform for scholars to focus on women issues, offer mentorship for female students, as well as advocate for gender-sensitive reforms within the university. In the like vein, some organizations and political bodies introduce informal or formal quotas to increase women's representation in leadership and decision-making roles. I said here, for informal and formal, because there is difference between the paper and the implementation. While everything is on paper, the problem is how far have they all gone with the implementation. So while not always successful, these measures have led to a noticeable increase in the number of women that hold positions as deans, deputy vice chancellors, as well as vice chancellor. In spite of the positive shifts, significant challenges persist, with many policies on paper, like I said, but are not effectively implemented. And this can be related to factors like sociocultural norms, like patriarchal and stereotypes, lack of political will, and this is with a disconnect between the official policy commitments and the actual will to enforce and fund them. Lack of reliable gender disaggregated data, this is coming up again in many institutions, and this makes it difficult to track progress, to identify specific problem areas, and to hold leaders accountable for lapses of what they refuse to do that is on paper. And there is also resistance to change, with some male-dominated sectors and individuals that are resisting gender mainstreaming initiatives because they view them as a threat to their established political power structures. And with the policies and institutional shifts, definitely there is possibility to have gender policies and offices in universities as a steps to promote real and lasting change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof, for highlighting some of the policies that are helping create a change in Nigeria. And the fact that you're actually going to review some of the policies to ensure that they're effective. But I'm also hearing you highlight the challenges of implementation. And I think that's one of the things that we need to continue focusing on, moving beyond the policies, but into effective implementation of those policies so that they could work. As we come to the close of this panel conversation, before I invite everybody for a parting shot, I am seeing the questions that are being posted on the chat. Once I request Dorothy to speak to her last question, I'll open up to those questions. So don't worry, we started 10 minutes late, so if you could indulge us for another 10 minutes and we can finish at 20 minutes to the top of the hour, kindly. So Dorothy, we are talking about accountability, and some of the things that we need to account for are the differences, let me say, because there are various factors that intersect to shape women's experiences in science and leadership. And how can programs better account for these intersectional dynamics?
Thank you very much for that. I think this question of intersectionality, which has been very much researched and put on the map in the social sciences, is becoming very important in the natural sciences as we continue to consider the fact that no science is done in a vacuum. Science is done so that in the end it is supporting all the population in terms of the findings and the products and services that emanate from it. And so I think more guidance is really needed for, I think in the natural sciences specifically, for researchers, for publishers, for funders to understand that intersecting identities, different social categories do actually come together to oppress and sometimes provide privileges to certain groups of people, depending on what the socio-economic context you're in. A group of authors across the globe and I, representing different sectors and different scientific disciplines, recently published a paper on Nature. I was providing guidelines about how the natural sciences could really think about intersectionality and think about the methodological approaches to funding agencies, to researchers, to publishers, and to provide guidelines for how do you ask the questions if you're a researcher in the natural sciences so that you can be able to think about the social categories. How do you collect your data? How do you analyze your data? How do you report on it? Some of that guidance is provided there. I think this is a really important step to keep providing more guidance and to keep encouraging more interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary approaches, especially coming from the social sciences, so that the natural sciences specifically can really be able to utilize them. I would say that, for all of us that are on the call that are researchers, really asking the question of what are the core categories that I need to be thinking about given the context of where my research is being taken. And how do I consider this in the analysis of the research that I'm undertaking is a really important question to always keep at the back of your mind. I think at an institutional level, now that we're talking about leadership, it's so important to be conscious about embedding equity in leadership and succession planning so that, the necessary support is available for people with intersecting identities. Here, I think about the importance of support activities such as coaching, transferring power and influence. So I keep talking about the behind the scenes of what comprises leadership. Power and influence can often be transferred to somebody with an intersecting identity in a way that really empowers them to take on their leadership role. I think those are some of the things that I would say in terms of intersectionality and considering that gender does not exist in a vacuum. Women do not exist in a vacuum. We all have intersecting identities, and it's so important in the natural sciences now, especially. We've seen it very much in the social sciences, in the natural sciences, to really start considering what does that mean for my research? How do I make sure that I am amplifying the different social categories in the context of my research? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorothy, for sharing about your guidelines. We'll request you to share the link to that publication so that we can share it with our audience, and for also telling us, reminding us that leadership means different things to different people. How does it exist in your context? And reminding our audience that we were asking you what leadership means to you. There are various questions in that Menti. I hope you've responded. Now, I want to transition to the Q&A, and Okay, I'm seeing some questions around our call for applications for our fellowships and different programs. My answer to you, Bukola and Rukayat, is to monitor. We have had several programs open, the calls open for applications. Some we are still going through the selection process, and we should be able to get back to you in due time when the selection has been completed. Otherwise, I hope you've subscribed to our newsletter so that you can be able to get news around when we release new calls for new programs, for new fellowship programs, and we'll get back to you. Now, there's a question from Petra. What structural changes in institutions are most critical to sustainably widen the pipeline of leadership in science? I think, Petra, I can safely say that when Prof. Bolanle was talking about the policies and the policy shift, she mentioned some of this. Dorothy has also mentioned some of that. But you've also asked, how can mentorship and sponsorship be reimagined to better support women scientists transitioning into leadership roles? Good question there. We can take that one if any of the panelists can answer. Other than that, I'm not seeing any new questions in the chat in the Q&A. Dorothy has posted the link to the publication as well as her email address. Thank you so much, Dorothy, for inviting our audience to continue engaging with you beyond this. The link to the newsletter. Yes, my colleagues will post the link to subscribe to our newsletter. I'm requesting my colleague Joanne to post that in the chat so that you can subscribe, but you can also find it on our website. If you go to our website on the homepage at the bottom, you can subscribe to our newsletter and you should be able to get news about our programs. We are bringing this to a close. Thank you very much for staying with us to the very end. And I'd like to invite our panelists, and I'll start with you, Fiona, to give us a parting shot. We had asked you to pick one question to respond to as you give us, your closing remarks and a parting shot. And I want to start with you, Fiona, and then I'll call the rest of the panelists in the order in which they appear on my screen to share your closing remarks and your parting shot as we bring this conversation to an end for now. I don't know which question you want to respond to.
I think I wanted to just touch a little bit on this idea of like the implementation. So
Yeah.
what can we do to actually address some of the things we're finding, some of the things that are being shared, the realities that African women researchers are facing. And I think the one thing I really want to implore us to do is to continue to have these very open dialogues and bring in these different framings, like with what Dorothy was bringing in. These experiences are not at all in a silo, and I think it's really important for us to start to understand the full picture of the realities. So, for example, a good example would be funding. You know, it's a big one. It's a really big component of the stresses that African women researchers are facing. However, what are we doing about this? How funding cycles are done, how funding applications are done, how reporting around funding is done? Have they considered who these women are? That's, I think, what I really want to invite us to do, so that we can really create interventions that are real and like will have real impact. And some of these things are not huge changes, you know, and so I think it's just asking for a little bit of more intentionality when we're thinking about the things that we need to do, because there is just so much that we are missing by not creating these kind of solutions that can really have huge impacts on these women, so that all they need is to just have space, given the opportunities to show up, and the rest they will do. They will walk through that door. They will thrive. They will do all of the amazing research that will impact and influence our continent. We just need to really, truly listen and be intentional about how we're opening up that space for them, how that space looks like for them. So that's my kind of broader parting shot, but the point around thinking, intentionality, listening, and thinking about the full picture.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Real practical interventions, we will get those if we think about which women are we targeting. Dorothy?
So I'm going to do something very similar to what Fiona has done. For me, it's so important for all of us as women to remain both activist and action orientated in our workplaces, in our homes, in the spaces that we occupy, and especially where we have power and influence. And hold your power, exercise your power, because no one else is going to champion the cause for gender inclusion better than the people who are most affected by it. We can ask men to be our allies, and it's so important to have male champions. But if we are not activist, if we are not also action orientated in the spaces where we occupy, it does not do well for our cause. So I implore everybody that is here, remain both activist and action orientated in your spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. We had more than 200 people here. Your work is cut out for you. Let us all go out there, advocate for us. Let us all continue the conversations. Let us not get tired of having these conversations. And and Prof.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's just a quick one. It is very crucial to have gender equitable budgeting, as well as gender disaggregated data collection across the universities, institutions, government bodies, because it will be a means to show the accountability of these bodies, and it would expose how much they've been able to relate with what the policy says and the practice. And with that, the women are just coming up, but they think we are there. By the time we see the data, it will be obvious we're still far behind where we should be. So I would advise that there is mandatory implementation of the gender equitable budgeting, as well as gender disaggregated data collection across organizations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. You're saying that we need to prioritize gender equitable budgeting and to show how we can use the gender disaggregated data better to make decisions, again, going back to evidence. And finally, Dr. Kanduma.
Yes, for me, coming from a university, I want to say that the first and the most important thing that we should advocate for is to strengthen the capacity of schools and universities to teach STEM, but also to be able to link, graduates with industry and create opportunities for them beyond, the university, because we find that our students really are in a rush to exit from STEM. And this is because there seems to be, very few opportunities for them after graduating. And so as, people in this space, we want to advocate the government. For example, I don't know whether it's happening in the other African governments, but we see the government in Kenya defunding schools and also allocating very limited resources to universities as well. And now they are playing around with the policy about mathematics, and this is a problem because I can tell you from where I sit, I don't see any competent, successful scientist who doesn't need math, moving forward. And then I just wanted to touch about the second question about the role of men and other broader institutional allies. And for us, like it has been said, just know that family and our careers, we are one and the same. And unless we have men champions who support their women to go through education, to go through our even careers at the moment, be able to step in when we can't be at home, to cook for them, to take care of the kids. And our institutions that they support really by creating policies that make at least women be able to find space in the decision-making table. So for that last question, I think, and it's the most important, it gives confidence to women that, their family is supportive and their institutions are also supportive and creating an enabling environment for women to thrive. Let me stop there because of time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Kanduma. I'd like to thank all our attendees for today's webinar. I'd like to thank everybody who's worked so hard behind the scenes to make this a success, the award team that was behind this. Thank you very much. I'm seeing the award trainers who are here, who have walked the journey. This webinar was also marking the end of the first training module, Leadership and Mentoring for the Award Leadership Program for Emerging Women in Science. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your active participation. We have had a very insightful conversation on what the prospects, the priorities, and the promises look like for us to be able to widen the pipeline of women in science leadership. And I am very proud of what we have shared here before. And also to show, just to say that indeed there's a lot of progress that we've made and there's a lot of hope and we are not going to get tired. Campaigning and advocating for strategies that work and for sustaining whatever is already working. Let us stop doing what is not working. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if, there were a few gentlemen in the audience. This has been your webinar. Thank you very much. And enjoy the rest of your day from wherever you're joining.
Thank you, everyone. Well moderated, Doreen.
Thank you.